Now I'd like to introduce Larry Naritelli. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ken. You know, I couldn't really disagree with many of the things that Ken said, so I'm going to just try and tell you a little bit about myself, how I got here, and why I decided to run for governor. Last year, I was very disappointed, or a year and a half ago, in the 2008 election season. I saw my party drifting away from the values that it had upheld for many years. And when I watched John McCain under the direction of that lady over there in his campaign embrace Van Jones' alternative energy, I became very, very upset. Because as a former power systems engineer, or a training in power systems engineering, I knew that alternative energy was far more expensive than fossil fuel energy. And I knew we were being told duplicity and deceptions to get progressive politicians elected to office. So I was sitting there at home after the election, and I was looking at the TV set, and the media is telling us about global warming, the media is telling us about windmills, a 10th century technology, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I'm yelling at the TV, and my son Joe asks me, "Dad, why are you yelling at the TV?" And I told him, this isn't what our country is about. And he knew that, and he looked at me and he said, "Dad, are we going to have a revolution?" Because that hit me. Because the veterans in this museum and the veterans in this audience did not go out and fight for us to have a civil war or a revolution in this country. And I explained to Joe, I said, "No, Joe, we're not going to have a revolution because our founding fathers gave us the ability to remove tyrants from office when they gave us our Constitution and they gave us our Declaration of Independence." He said to me, he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" As our children always do. And I said, "Well, Joe, what we have to do is you would have to get involved in the political process. We have to go out there and talk to people." Because it didn't seem apparent to me that many people knew what was going on. So he said, "Well, Dad, let's go down here, let's go down to a tea party and talk to people." Because I had never been involved in the Republican Party before. And so I went down to the tea party on Spanish Landing on April 11th. And I told Joe, I said, "Look, Joe, let's take the American flag, because we are going to go down there and stand up for our Constitution, and stand up for our Declaration of Independence, and stand up for our rights." And when I got down there was 1,500 other people to 2,000 people that felt exactly the same way that I did. Exactly the same way that you feel right now. When we were walking in there, we saw the yellow flag with the snake on it, the Gadsden flag, "Don't tread on me." And my son asked me, he said, "What does that flag mean, Dad? I thought we needed the red, white, and blue." And I told him, "Joe, that's a warning flag. That flag is being raised because our freedoms and our rights are under attack. We are threatened from our own politicians from within." And I had not seen that flag since the days of the Vietnam War. But I saw it, and I saw it again, and I've never seen it as much as I've seen it over the past year. So when I went to the tea party, he said to me, "Dad, you got to get up there and speak. You got to tell the people at the tea party." And I said, "Well, they already have speakers, Joe. They're probably not going to let someone just walk up from the crowd and become a speaker." So I went over and I met Dawn Wildman, who is the leader of the Tea Party movement here. And I asked her, I said, "Dawn, do you have any chance for me to speak?" And she said, "Well, not today, but let me put you in touch with some other people." And so I went to the next tea party, and that tea party I met Jason Miller and his mother Lynn Miller, and that was in Rancho Bernardo. And Jason somewhat impressed me when I saw him there, because when we were standing there holding the flag, watching the cars go by, holding up our signs, he came out there with a bullhorn and he started speaking up, just like we all have to speak up. We can't be complacent anymore. And so Jason and Lynn asked me if I would help them with a video. So I went to their Tea Party on June 28th. And I helped them make a video. And what we did is we asked people, after they went up and signed the constitutional banner, there was a banner of the Constitution, we asked them to come off of there, and on the video we asked them to read the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. Because the Bill of Rights is what gives us our freedoms and what protects us from tyranny. And then the following week, I met Stephanie John. And I met her at the July 4th Tea Party. And she asked me to speak there, or Jeff Langsgard, one of the people from the Independence Caucus, asked me to speak there. And at that Tea Party, I wanted to make sure that I gave credit to our founding fathers. So my son helped me write a speech about the Declaration of Independence. And before I made that speech, people would tell me, go easy, it's a new president, don't be too critical, Larry. Well, I didn't listen to them, because I was not going to sacrifice my values. I knew what was going on in this country was wrong, and I knew I had to stand up and speak. And when I was speaking there, the crowd got very silent, and I was reading off of a speech. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, are they listening to me? I wasn't sure. And I got to one line in that speech, and I knew they were all listening because I heard a big uproar in the crowd. And that line was after I described how alternative energy is very expensive, how it causes our oil prices to rise, it doesn't replace them. And I said, alternative energy will not get us off of foreign oil. Developing our own domestic oil resources will. So I went on to explain to them how climate change and global warming is a fraud and a hoax, and it's meant to undermine our rights in the Constitution. Now, Al Gore created this thing with foreign interest groups and foreign governments to overturn our Declaration of Independence and put us under the control of global governance. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not going to happen. Since I started speaking out about that, and I had been speaking to that several years before I went into my son's classroom when they were teaching the inconvenient truth. And I asked the teachers, I said, you know what? I want to teach them the real truth, the real science. And there's on my website, you can look up under education a letter that I received from them back in 2007. And I went on and I talked about Nancy Pelosi and her taxes. Right now we have her trying to push through a health care bill through reconciliation. She wants a simple majority in the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, she's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. She has no business telling the Senate how to operate.